A man was incarcerated for 30 years, did not commit the crime. A personal injury attorney who's considered to be a rookie in law actually was able to get him free. Let's put up his picture for a mass. His name is Thomas Raynard James. Look at that face. That's the face of a man who had 30 years of his life taken away because of a biased, prejudicial, racist system. Let's put up her picture. The attorney that gave him his life back is an injury attorney who just followed the evidence. Let me give you some background to this story. Natlie Figgers is a business and personal injury attorney who heard about Thomas Raynard James. She heard about the case from one of his friends. Thank God for friends. The criminal attorneys who would take on this case required fees. They wanted to be paid. His friends were trying to raise the money when they approached Ms. Figgers. She agreed to help James, logging more than 2,000 hours of researching and interviewing people to secure evidence of his innocence. I couldn't stop until he was out, she said. So I kept giving them more. It became overwhelming evidence of his innocence. Now let me say this, what happened here? You had people who were willing to listen. You had a professional who was willing to open their ears rather than open up her bank account and say, put money in it. And what was the result? Justice. Sometimes we have to be able to listen, willing to step up, be a leader when called upon. She did not expect in her legal practice that this would be what she was going to do. But she was a person that cared. Let's put up a picture of Mr. James. He spent 31 years in a Florida prison for a 1990 murder of an elderly Miami man in a home invasion and robbery. The state freed him in April after a key witness recanted her testimony. Another man named Tommy James, was implicated in the home invasion robbery gone wrong because he was associated with Vincent Dog Williams, who was fingered for the crime by other witnesses. So this was one of those guilty by associations. Now, how did she win this case? Ms. Figgers, the attorney, says she spoke with at least 75 people, including the witness who changed her story. She drove hundreds of miles to gather evidence just weeks after giving birth. She discovered they were 9 sets of prints at the crime scene, 9. But none of them belonged to Mr. James, her client. The man had denied being in the close-knit neighborhood at the time of the McKinnon's murder and had only visited once or twice years before the crime, but he could not recall his whereabouts at the time of the crime to detectives. You already see the fixes in. The detectives now say, okay, no alibi. You're black, we're able to pin this on you regardless of the evidence. We're gonna make sure we create a witness. That's all you needed. That's all you needed back then, and typically that's all you need today. A black person, you cannot confirm whereabouts. You got a guilty person at trial. Still the same system. All right, Figgers took all of the evidence she found to the Florida Justice Institute's wrongful conviction unit. She recommends cases for a second look. The Miami-Dade County State Attorney's Office reopened the case in 2021. The state attorney, Catherine Fernandez Rundle, said her team reviewed over 10,000 pages, examined fingerprints, and took the sworn statements from witnesses. Figgers' challenge, however, was getting the prosecution's witness, Dorothy Walton, to speak. Here's the quote from the attorney. She did not want to give any statements, Figgers told NBC News of Walton. She did not want to talk to people for years. When I went to interview her, she cracked the door open. I knew at that time she was giving me an opportunity to show her why she should do the right thing. It was such an emotional point for me, the attorney says. I could not help but to cry to her. And I told her, if God tells you to give me a call when I leave, please give me a call. I'm going to answer. But I'm doing this because he is an innocent person. And I'm doing this because God put me here, and I left. Ms. Figgers said Walton called 10 minutes later asking how she knew James, if they were related, and if he was paying her to look into the case. No, I'm doing this pro bono. She asked me, how did I know it wasn't him? I said, because I know. And she said, I know. it wasn't him too. Put his picture up again. After the final piece of evidence was in place, Mr. James was finally freed April 27th. He told reporters that he forgives Ms. Walton and is grateful his attorney stepped in when no one else would. His quote was, "I owe her my life." Man, so 30 years taken away from him, 30 years taken away from his humanity, his ability to live and enjoy the experience, the journey we know as life, all because of corruption. Now, I bring these stories routinely to you because I want you to see the systematic bias, but I also want you to realize something that never happens in these cases. You know, there was a lying detective. You know, there was a lying witness. You know, there was a corrupt prosecutor. You know, they're still alive. You know, they will not be charged with any crimes.
That's right.
Hell, they won't even be disbarred. All right, Rick, thoughts on this?
Yeah, there's a lot. Well put, first off. Secondly, Natlie is a hero.
Yeah.
2 years out of law school, a personal injury lawyer, zero experience in criminal law, and she works, let's be honest, her ass off because she believed in this man. When I was reading up on the story, it was symbolic of what we have seen in years past of how one small thing that is wrong can lead to a conviction to ruin someone's life. And the biggest thing was the Coral Gables police entered his name in a database and found a Thomas James and tagged him as the murderer without physical evidence. All they did was put his name in a database and said, "That guy, go get him." And they locked him up. No fingerprints of his, there were other fingerprints there. There was no evidence whatsoever. And because of a database flaw of Thomas James or Tommy James instead of who he is, which is Thomas Raynard James, they locked him up and everybody went with it because all they cared about was bringing someone to justice. It doesn't matter who, it doesn't matter their story, doesn't matter where they are in life, doesn't matter what they're trying to do. They say that basically with the criminal justice that it's blind, but it's not.
Right.
It takes so many people to go along with it, and they willingly do it because it appears that they just don't want to say to the other, this might be wrong or it might be flawed. I'm glad he's getting his life back, but I truly hope he sues the state and wins big, because no one should be able to have their life completely upended for over 30 years for something they did not do.
That's right. And you look at this from the context of this attorney did the right thing. Not the right thing simply by the standards of her profession, but the right thing morally and ethically to the standards of humanity. While something very wrong was done to him, there was something very right that happened to him much later. And that's how we change the world. We don't change the world just because we allow or complain about the wrong, but when it's an opportunity for us to do the right, we step up. That's what she did. She did not make the excuse of, I'm not a criminal defense attorney, or I don't have the experience, or I don't have the staffing, or I don't have the time. She found it and overturned an entire conviction.